I'm now joined by Alex White, Head of Country Analysis at the Economist Intelligence Unit. Alex, thanks very much for your time today.
Not at all.
Obviously, you've been a pretty busy man and you're pretty in demand here at the FT Festival of Finance. It's been a big week.
It's been a very big week. There's not been a lot of sleep. I'm hoping it tidies itself up soon, but it doesn't look as though it's going to.
So Brexit, I think, was overwhelmingly, certainly in the bookies' eyes, a surprise.
Yeah, and in our eyes as well. And we've got to hold our hands up and say, look, we didn't see this. Very few people did. I look at the books by people like Rob Ford, who've been studying UKIP for years. Rob's been looking into what he calls the revolt on the right. Even he didn't see the size and scale of this, so it's a big shock to everyone.
Who is actually going to sit down and negotiate with the EU and trigger Article 50?
Well, as of today, we think it's Theresa May. And actually, we've been thinking that Theresa May was the likeliest candidate since well before this happened. It doesn't matter who it is, though. What matters is what the process looks like, what the UK gets out of this. We think it's basically an EEA-minus deal, so something not a million miles away from Norway, but different. The UK is idiosyncratic, obviously. Now, we expect a contraction next year. We expect a contraction of about 1%. If we are in that environment where the economy is just bleeding lower and we're in a world where our European partners don't have an incentive to do a quick deal, it could get quite nasty. So as I say, our baseline is that we get an EEA-minus deal, but that is the modal view, it's not the central view. Most of the risks to that are to the downside. So we think Article 50 by the end of the year. That gives you the 2-year negotiating period, so Britain is out by late 2018. The question is, what kind of deal do you get? As I say, I'd say that we're on the optimistic side of things. I've run into people here today at the conference saying things like, look, there's no way the UK is going to get anything, it'll be WTO only. If it's WTO only, the hit to the economy is just massive. We really don't see that environment happening. We see an EEA type deal.
So why did the electorate vote for this?
Well, the electorate voted for it for many, many reasons. I mean, let's remember why the referendum was held. The referendum was held because of internal party management within the Conservative Party, and I think that people will be looking back on that and questioning the extent to which the Prime Minister put the party before the country. In terms of why we got the result that we did, there'll be books written on this. I think you've got to put it in the context of what's going on across the West as a whole, the rise of populism. We're seeing that in America. We're seeing it across much of Europe. I think what's most interesting is we've always expected a sort of populist breakthrough. We never expected to see it in the UK. It was, it's Italy, France, countries like this that we've been very concerned about. It's remarkable to see this breakthrough happening in such a small C conservative country as the UK.
And Alex, how likely, if you and I sit down here in 10 years' time, how likely is it, do you think, the EU is still together? So I asked Michael Pettis this question, and he said the EU doesn't, in its current form, doesn't exist in 10 years' time. What do you think?
We're not as bearish as that, but I think it is the right question to be asking. So look, our view on this is simple. It's to say Europe is good at muddle through. It's good at Merkeling its way through. It will continue to do that for the foreseeable future. But the region has the capacity to cope with one crisis at a time. It doesn't have the capacity to cope with multiple crises at the same time. So we're one of the few forecasters who still thinks that we have a Grexit, the original exit suffix, that we still have a Grexit. Obviously, the region's still dealing with the migration crisis. We've got political crises potentially on the cards in Italy and France as the spillover from Brexit affects those countries. So if you get a perfect storm of issues coming together at the same time, then I think the Union won't be able to handle it, and then I'd agree with Michael Pettis. But I think we'd have to be unlucky for that confluence of things to all come together at the same time. The region's fundamental challenge, the challenge that underlies the Euro crisis, the migration crisis, the Brexit crisis, is that there just is no institutional coherence to what happens at European level. There is no European demos. There is no ability, or even really anymore any attempt to build a political consensus for the region as a whole about where the region is going. That's what underlies all these crises. That's what it's missing. I think that I'm an optimist. I think that ultimately they will get one. But I'm very sympathetic to Pettis' view. I think there's an awful lot of downside risk.
Right. Okay, Alex, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.